Hi guys. So in the previous video, we saw how we were able to register new users after encrypting their passwords. So let's uh, let's go to the next step and actually uh, allow persisting the user in a session. So let's quickly review what we did earlier. So when we went to register and entered an email and username, I'm sorry, an email and password, we were able to save this user in the database. So if we look at blog.report.all user, we would have that new user in our database with an encrypted password. So now what we need to do is uh, we need to actually know in a controller if the user has authenticated himself. So for us to be able to do that, we need to store something in a session to tell us that this user has already authenticated, and we need to allow the user to actually able to log in. So let's check out that. So the convention for login is usually you create a controller called sessions, which handle the login and logout of a user. Let's do that. So we'll create a controller called session controller, and what we need to do here is define a session controller. So use blog web controller, right? And again, when you want to log in, you need a new action. So the new action with a few params, we don't care about the params. So here we are going to render the new action, the new template. And to get this working, we need to set up a view with the name session view. Okay, so there's a lot of boilerplate here, but let's get through this. And finally, we need a template for new. So uh, web templates session view, and what we need to do here is say a login, right? So and finally, we need to set up the routes for this. So if we open up the router, we can so this time we'll actually use resources and set up our routes for session. Okay, so this is gonna set all the 8 routes for our session, and we don't however we don't want all right, so we want only the new, the create, and the destroy actions, right? So we just want these actions to work. So now that's taken care of, we can go to session new, and that shows us the login form. Okay, so on the login form, what we actually need is a form similar to the register form. So let's copy that from the register form. So copy this, put it in the login form, and one thing we'll change here is the form is going to go to /session, and we'll change the name to, and this looks good, and here say this is the login. Okay, so everything looks good, and if we enter the email and password, all right, so we just pasted the login form, right? So it's very similar to the register form. Now let's go to session new and hit login, and when we do that, it says we don't have the create action, so we need to add the create action, right? So this is going to create the actual session, and this has access to something called a session, and so these are the session params. Okay, so what we need to do here is in create we need to store this data in a session. So the way we do that in Phoenix is we need to use something called put session, and let's look at the documentation of that. All right, session, yeah. So we need put session, connection, and key and value. So what we need to do here is, all right, so first we need to validate that the user is authentic, right? Or the input is authentic, okay? And once we've done that, we need to save this so that other requests can use this info. Okay, so to validate this, let's create a quick module in our web models folder. Actually, let's put it in the user module. So authenticate or valid authentication, and this is going to take an email and a password. Okay, so what it's going to do is it's going to use the repo to get the user by email. So we'll say email is email. That's going to give us the user, and if the user is nil, so we can use a condition here. Say if it is nil, we'll return false, because that means this guy is not authenticated properly. And if we get a valid user, what we can do is we can use come on in dot bcrypt dot check password, or what is it? Come on in check password. Okay, and this guy takes two things. Takes the password in clear text and the hashed password, which is the user dot encrypted password. Encrypted password, right? So that's gonna be our return value. But another thing we need to do is to avoid timing attacks, we need to add a delay here, which we can do using come on in dot bcrypt dot dummy password, dummy check password. Now this dummy check password performs a dummy check and always returns false. Okay, so that's good, right? And finally, in our session controller, so we need to go to our session controller. Yeah, so in our session controller, we can now use block.user.valid authentication and pass the email and password. So here we'll just match email and password and send those two, right? So if this guy is this guy is true, then we need to do something else. We need to do something else. So if this guy is true, then we need to actually save this in a session. If it is not true, then we need to render the connection while also setting an error message. So for now, we'll just add a to do, add error message. And so to actually save this data in a session, so one thing we forgot to return is the user. So we should return, all right, so hang on, let's delete everything because there's too much clutter, and open the session controller. Okay, and in the session controller, valid authentication should return error if the password doesn't match, and it should return okay, and so all right, so the so all right, so we'll say it's gonna return a boolean and a user. Okay, so it's gonna return false and nil in this case, and true and user in this case. Okay, so we need to put this in a new line and say valid user, and if valid, then what we need to do is we need to put the put session, put session, use the connection, and say user ID is user.id. Okay, so once we do this, we are going to get back a connection, and then we need to use that connection to redirect to the home page. So redirect to the home page. Now instead of doing that, we could have just said connection should be piped to put session, and should be further piped to the redirect. Okay, this reads much nicer. So this should save the session in our application, and all right. So that's all we have to do for our session to be saved. So let's run this, and it says unhandled operator on line number 38. So what's that? Maybe it's getting confused because of a lack of parenthesis. No, it says okay, unhandled operator arrow. That is weird. What's wrong here? So we have a condition, we are matching on that condition, and if it is nil, we are returning a tuple which says false and nil. Otherwise, we are returning another tuple which says true or false and user. So I can't see what's wrong here. So maybe we need to restart the server. Alright, so user line number 38, unhandled operator. Okay, what if I just return boolean here? What's it gonna say now? Okay, all right, it says on line number 14 we have undefined put session. Put session, yeah, there's a typo there. And user line number 38. I don't know what I'm missing here. Condition. Oh, this is not a condition, this is a case. So yeah, simple mistake. Let's see, let's fix that. And now we have a undefined function repo get by repo is not available, and that's because we forgot the alias. All right, so now in our session we should have the user ID. So all I want to do now is show the current user's username in the top right corner somewhere over here. So to do that, we need to go to the app HTML, and right here I want to say LIA and current user dot email. So to get this working, what we need is we need to set current user in each controller's action. Now we know that we can run the common code by using a plug, by applying that plug to our pipeline. So let's do that. So we'll go to our router, and in the browser pipeline at the end we'll add load current user. Okay, so this plug is gonna load our current user. Now to actually get this plug working, what we need to do is so let's see, create a plug. Okay, plug. And so what I'm trying to see is how does it expand. So I think the way it expands is, and I'm not sure yet, is that it tries to find a module with the name load current user. So let's define that module. Actually, I think this should take the module name as a plug. So I'll say blog dot load current user. Okay, so web, where do we put that? Okay, so I'm gonna create a directory called plugs. I'm not sure if, yeah, so plugs, and we'll say load current user dot ex. We'll see what is the proper place for a plug in a minute, but for now let's just do this. And a plug a plug needs to define two methods, an init method which gets options and can change those options and return them, and it needs another method called call, which gets a connection and the options from above, and it's supposed to work on the connection. Now all we want to do here is get the user ID, right? So to get the user ID, we can use the get session method from plug. So get session on the connection with the key user ID. This is going to give us the user ID, and then we'll say blog.repo. get user whose ID is user ID, right? So this is going to give us the user. Now finally what we're going to do is we're going to assign the user with a string called with a symbol called current user. Okay, so this should do it. And yeah, this should do it. And at the end, when in the view, it should give us access to the current user, right? So let's see if it works. I'm sure it shouldn't, but undefined function get session. All right. So get session is a method. Get session. So get session is a method on what is it? plug.connection.get session. So we need to say plug.connection.get session. Now we have line number 9 assign, and this I think is on connection 2, and it seems it seems like it worked, right? So a few things here. What we've done is we've added a plug called load current user, where so a plug gets needs to have two functions. Okay, the first can be used to pass configuration information, and the second is which is called when you get a request. Okay, and this is where we can enrich the connection assigns or halt the pipeline if something goes wrong. Do whatever we want here. Okay, and what we're doing here is we are getting our session user ID saved in the session, and we're getting the user using the repository, and then we are setting up in the connection assign. Now once we do that, every controller is going to have access to that via the connection assigns current user. Okay, and since it's part of the connection assigns current as a current user, you can use it in your view by just using the @ syntax, @ prefix. So if you say @ current user, then that's going to give you the current user keys value in your assigns map. Okay, so this is as if we are from Phoenix. This is as if we are getting the current user from the assigns. Okay, but this is much simpler, and I'm not sure if it's a dictionary or a map, but you get the idea, right? So we've done that, right? Awesome. So that now we have m@mail.com. We are able to load the user. Another thing we need to do is somehow convey if the user is logged in, because if I open this in a new in a new browser window, it's going to fail because the session is empty, right? So what we need to do here is we need check here too. So if user ID is not nil, then we need to do this, right? And yeah, so that's what we need to do here. So if we open a new window, this is gonna, all right, so another mistake we've done here is, all right, so let's fix this. So if user ID is not defined, then we need to return the connection as it is without changing in it. Otherwise we need to return this. Okay, so yeah, that should do it. And actually, to make this simpler, yeah, I'm just refactoring this. So, oh yeah, I think the previous version was better. So this is better. If user ID is found, we assign the current user and return that session, or else we just return the session connection as it is. Okay, so that's good, but this is gonna fail, right? Current user is gonna fail because this is going to be nil. Now, one thing which we can do is we can add a helper method in the views layout view. We'll call it user signed in, and it takes a connection, and what it's going to do is it's going to say connection.assigns.current user. I'm just checking if this guy is present. So now in here we can say if user signed in, and send the connection. In that case, we're going to show the user's email. Otherwise, we are going to say anonymous, right? So if we refresh this now, it says current user not found in. Okay, so connection assigns. All right, so connection assigns. Let's use the access syntax, right? So the reason it failed earlier was if we use .current user, it's gonna fail if that key is not present. But if you use the access syntax using square brackets, it's gonna give us a nil if that key doesn't have a value. Okay, so that's good. Let's open up a normal window, and there we're logged in, so that's good, right? So we have anonymous if this guy is not signed in, and we have the username if this guy is signed in, right? So that's good. So now we have a way to know if the user is signed in. So now using this functionality, we can set up our application so that it, if you look at our to-do list, so that it allows only admins to create posts, and users who are not signed in, users who are signed in as normal users to create comments. So that's it in this video. If you guys are interested, I'll create another video which shows authorization. And actually, let's get back to this in the next video, where I'll show you how to use Guardian to take care of our session management and key management, instead of doing this ourselves manually. All right. So till the next episode, take care, guys.